and I own Monument Farms in Weybridge.
Good morning. Welcome. So, Brian, do you want to lead off?
Sure. I guess our concerns with this, or my concern with this bill, is mainly goes back to just supporting our businesses and our dealerships. As a farmer who relies heavily on this dealership for parts and repairs in shop or even on our farm, if this was to be passed, the concerns I have is, is farmers being able to cut out the dealers and buy parts direct from the large manufacturers, and also the service side of things where some independent people may be able to get these programs, or even larger farms, if they could afford these programs through the manufacturers, eliminating a lot of the work here for these dealerships. And the question, if they're going to be in business and be here to support us when we really need them, in the future. I think, the sales alone aren't going to support these businesses. And, if they're not selling parts or doing service, I think it's going to be detrimental. I have a piece of equipment there is no dealer here. The closest dealer is some 5 hours away. And I can tell you it's challenging. Last year, I thought that they may have to come up here, and, we were looking at quite a travel time that you're going to pay for, and that's going to be an added expense. And just to come troubleshoot and then possibly not be able to even bring the parts before they come troubleshoot. So it might have meant a second visit. In the end, it didn't pan out, but that's just an example that concerns me about having this bill passed and having the ability for people to circumvent basically the dealership. Our local dealership, our New Holland Case dealership here in Middlebury, Champlain Valley Equipment, for years, they've allowed us farmers who do a lot of our own maintenance to come in and get advice off from their mechanics and talk to their mechanics, which allows us to do a lot of this maintenance ourselves. But when we need them, they are here. And if it's above our head, or we don't have the time, if we're busy cropping, we can make that phone call and have them come right out. So those are my concerns, just off the cuff. And I'm sure Peter has some of the same concerns and maybe more.
Yeah, I've got some concerns. Not only do we buy the equipment here.
Sorry, Peter. Would you just introduce yourself for the record and give us your name and your where you live and what you do?
Yes. My name is Peter James. Along with my family, we own Monument Farms Dairy in Weybridge. We're a producer processor and distribute milk throughout Vermont. I rely on local businesses to support us. And like Brian, we feel that we should support local businesses. We also have a piece of equipment that the dealer was in Vermont. It left. They have to now travel 3 hours to come service this piece of equipment because it's all computerized. They come, they find they don't have the right part. They go way back to Concord, New Hampshire to get the right part. It's costly for us, as well as it's not beneficial for anybody. One of the concerns I have is if our dealerships get pushed out of business, out of the repair business, we don't have anybody to fall back on. As Brian said, we do a lot of our own maintenance. When we need technical support, we can come here, we can get that technical support without owning all the technical tools. If it's beyond what we feel capable of doing, then we let them do it. Another concern of mine is if they're just selling equipment, who's going to cover the warranty end of it, which falls back on to the purchaser. Who is going to regulate the control of emissions and safety features on these pieces of equipment when every Tom, Dick, and Harry has the ability to go in and alter or change or delete some of this stuff? I guess that's my concern. We do rely heavily on the dealerships, not always for complete service, but for the technical part of it.
Thank you. We'll see if there's questions from committee members. Representative Rice.
Yeah, thank you both. Just I guess first a point of clarity. There's nothing in the bill that would prohibit or stop these dealers from having service departments and doing all the service they already do. And I think you mentioned a reason why they wouldn't, which is that they would still hold the warranty and do a lot of that warranty work. So they wouldn't just be selling equipment unless they decided to just be selling equipment. But I'm just wondering, so in the case you both described examples where you own equipment where there's no dealer in Vermont for that equipment, and you have to have long travel time for service technicians to come and diagnose the problem, hopefully address it and get you back using the equipment. Would it be helpful in that circumstance for there to be an independent mechanic here in Vermont who had access to the diagnostics and the parts and the tools like the dealers hours away do, that could help get you that repair quicker?
So in my situation last year, I checked in with the local independent that did think he could work on my mower. And in the end, he couldn't, and he couldn't justify, because of the price of this technical data that he could purchase if this bill passed through, but he couldn't justify it for a few customers. I think it's pretty expensive, I would imagine. And so he wasn't going to go out and update his software for one service call, so I don't think that's going to answer, fix all of that, because I think for that mechanic to have it for, to get access to Deere, to Case, to, AGCO, Kubota, all these different things. We're in Vermont, we're working with those smaller independent mechanics. I just don't see them, even if it's available to them, being able to, justify purchasing all of those. I think in the Midwest, it's maybe a different scenario, where they're covering a lot more area, or they're much larger. Even if they're independent, they probably cover a lot more than what these, I call them mobile mechanics here in this area, can do.
The farms out in the Midwest, the big grain farms that have multiple combines or forage harvesters, 10, 15 of them, it does probably make a little more sense for them to do this versus the farms in New England, where you have one of each piece of equipment. And just to be, you could buy the technology and all the tools, but to be up to date and to understand how to do it, it would just be a huge undertaking, more than my business wants to take on.
I mean, these techs from these dealerships, I'm sure the dealerships are spending quite a bit of money to train these techs. I know through the winter months, many of these techs go out west to workshops and, get trained properly how to use this. I guess that would be a question. How's that independent guy, if he buys it from Deere or Case, how is he gonna get the training, to know how to use it and implement it once he has it? So I think there's a lot of gray areas there. I'm sure that it may not, it may not work out as well as some people think.
Representative Pearl.
I know you guys only represent obviously two farms, but do you foresee if this legislation did pass and you had the availability to buy this equipment, or that independent people near you had the ability to buy it and work on your equipment, do you foresee no longer using the dealership for service and doing it yourself or hiring somebody local?
Well, I think that's the fear. And then you risk putting that dealer out of business. I mean, if I've always been told by the dealerships, and, we don't make as much on the sale of the vehicle or the tractor as we do make our parts. It's the whole big picture: parts, labor, and sales. So if they just turn into selling a piece of equipment, I don't know if they can be around in the future. There's already been a lot of consolidation for equipment dealers over the years, particularly on the Deere side. We've seen it in Vermont where, there's been 2 or 3 smaller John Deere dealers that have gone out of business and been bought up by other larger ones. And that's already a trend that makes you nervous if you're in a part of the state that no longer has a John Deere dealer. But yeah, I think you're putting these dealerships at risk of that potential. If all of a sudden, even some of their current mechanics get the whim, oh, I'm going to go out and make this $100 an hour myself. They're paying me $30 to work in the shop. They're billing me out at $130. I can go buy this stuff now. I'm going to go buy it and get it. And that jeopardizes both the customer service, because now they're short on mechanics and there's so much competition out there. Competition's good to an extent, but if the dealership's not here, like Peter said earlier, where are we going to buy this equipment and who's going to warranty it if they're not here to provide warranty service? I don't believe that Deere or Case or Kubota or any of them in the future would allow some independent service guy to do the warranty work on. And you're talking, in some of these cases, several $100,000. A self-propelled forage harvester is minimally $700,000 to $800,000 now. Do we want to buy something like that and not have a dealership around to guarantee the warranty work on that machine? Because I really would doubt that these independents would have the ability to provide warranty service. So that's another concern.
Another concern would be, during crop season, when you break down and you can figure out what's wrong, you could go call up the manufacturer, tell them what part you need, wait the day or two for it to get shipped to you, and in the meantime your feed is drying out or getting too wet, one or the other, not getting harvested, and going bad. Whereas with a good parts department, you can go to the parts department, they have it on the shelf, not always, but a good number of times they have it on the shelf, you're back going within hours. If we lose that, and there's no parts needed, no parts department needed, again, it goes back to a company just being there for sales, 1 or 2 people. I don't know how that's going to work.
Representative Rice.
Yeah, just to restate Representative Pearl's question, because I think it's important for us to hear. He was asking, you're here describing all the reasons why you have a good relationship with your local dealer and why you think it's important for them to stick around, why you get work done there. Do you foresee that changing for you and your farm operations if this bill were to pass? Or do you think you'd keep, for the most part, going to your dealers, which would certainly be your prerogative and the prerogative of I would think, hundreds of other farmers around the state who have the same relationships that you do with their dealers?
I personally feel that, for me, it would probably stay the same if the dealer stayed in business with sales, service, and parts. If it changed, then it would change for us too as the consumer.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't foresee us, even if the ability out there is to go purchase this software. We run a small crew and a lot of acres. And like I think Peter mentioned earlier, having just the time to deal with it too. If we're broke down in the middle of the day with one piece of equipment, we got to keep going with whatever else we have. We don't always have the time to stop and diagnose and then chase parts and we can call this service truck up. Sometimes they already think they know what it is. They have the part, they bring it down, they can fix it while we're still working and have it back going. And the other thing that I was thinking about on that was the fact that it's if the business is not here, what that does to the local economy. I mean, this dealership right here, that we're talking about, I'm sure has 35, 40 employees just in this one store. And I think that impact has to be thought about too, and how many other supporting businesses, we're talking about. So.
Representative Pearl, and then we've got Mr. White, I think, is standing by. We want to bring in too. Henry, go ahead.
Just following up, and that is what I was getting to as far as your relationship with the dealer and how important that is, and that probably those things wouldn't change and would almost seem like a benefit to push the dealer to really make sure they're taking care of customers and be competitive and have those parts on the shelf, and in turn would hopefully, benefit the farmers in the long run, because they have to do a better job making sure that they're competing. And I mean, we all know that competition is a good thing in markets like this. So I guess that was the point I was making was that unless the dealers decide to no longer, support you in the way that they have been, there really wouldn't be any change other than having the opportunity for other people to access this equipment and work on things themselves, or, start their own business, which could potentially be a benefit to the economy if there's more businesses that do this, if there is the demand, I guess. That was just the point that I was making.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you both. And if you want to stand by, first of all, just to be sure that we have Timothy White available to speak next. I'll throw another question in while we're waiting for Mr. White. Either you can answer. Just what's the typical, and maybe there isn't a typical length of a warranty, but how long would a new piece of equipment kind that you're talking about in the several $100,000 range be warranted?
We bought a new forage harvester a year ago, and a typical warranty with a machine is a year from purchase. But they do push you, and we did do it. We bought an extended warranty which covered 3 years.
And what's the useful life of a piece of equipment like that? How long would you hang on to it?
As long as possible. Probably we try to get 8 to 10 years. We keep it serviced well. They get a lot of use, and it's constant running at full speed. But to answer your question, 8 to 10 years.
Thank you.
You know, the other benefit of having these dealers here, and again, that's my biggest fear is of all this competition, losing our dealers. That's my biggest concern. But like, if they've got another machine in the yard, a used, whether it's used or even new in some cases, and we break down and they don't have the part, they sometimes will lease that machine to us or let us borrow it to get our feet in. That's huge, huge. These independent guys aren't going to have that ability.
Do you mind taking another question while we have you? And we're still waiting for Mr. White to join us. Representative Rice.
I'm just wondering if this is legislation or if this sort of, right to repair movement's been out there for a while here in Vermont and throughout the country, obviously. Wondering if you were following this legislation or if somebody sort of flagged it as a potential problem for you.
I had heard about it on and off over the last 6 months, but just recently I got a notice through Farm Bureau that this was coming up.
Yeah, and same here. I'd heard a little bit about it, but certainly, there's been more, obviously, now that it's risen to the top. So I will admit I hadn't thought a lot about it until I started thinking of the unintended consequences maybe of it is what's got me a little concerned.
All right, Laura, do we have any insight into?
In the Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's having technical problems or what, but I did reach out via email and see if I can figure anything out.
All right. Well, any other questions for the witnesses that we do have? No? Okay. Well, maybe we'll stop then. And if we hear from Timothy White, we'll jump back on again. But thank you, both of you, for coming in this morning to give us your thoughts on the bill. And it's helpful to hear them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good morning, Speaker. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Good morning.
Good morning. Having technical difficulties on my end as well.
Okay, well, we can hear you, and if we can't see you, but that's fine. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. Oh, good. Now we have you.
Okay. My name is Timothy White. I am a maintenance supervisor for Shelburne Limestone Corporation. And we have 3 quarries throughout Vermont, plus one maintenance facility in Colchester. We have 7 technicians that we employ to work on our vast fleet of Caterpillar equipment and on-highway trucks. We're growing every year, trying to, and we we pay a high volume in sales and payroll tax revenue to the state for these technicians that we might not ordinarily have if we weren't the people that we are, and with the state of Vermont, and the relationship we have with our Caterpillar dealer. We rely heavily on them for support, whether it be parts, obviously the sales, diagnostics, and their ability to help us out when we can't fix things ourselves. They provide fleet training for our technicians that we obviously pay for, in the OEM diagnostic platform, ET, and online service manual, which is SIS, and then the technical support. We would have a lot of downtime if it wasn't for them being able to provide the support that they do with their mechanics in all their technical background. 2 years ago, we purchased 2 Sandvik rock drills from Sandvik directly out of Sweden, because they didn't have a servicing dealer for New England. When the drills arrived, and they were $900,000 a piece, it was a nightmare putting them into service because we had quite a few issues and there was no dealer to do a PDI when they arrived. So we managed to get through it, but not with help, without help from a Sandvik dealer in New York who stepped up to the plate and helped us out. And Sandvik has since realized that it was very important for them to establish a dealer in New England, in which they have done. At Shelburne, you know, limestone, we draw the line. Safety is our number one priority. And with some of these independent people that may end up with some of this software or tooling to work on some of the stuff that's very sophisticated, I feel that there's going to be a safety concern as well, that they may or may not be aware of, not having the proper training from the manufacturers that we have. And, you know, we definitely need to keep that in the back of our mind, that there's a lot of safety issues that go on, as well as the environmental issues as far as changing EPA regulations on the software and stuff like that, if they were to get their hands on some of those codes that only the dealers have access to. You know, we spend thousands of dollars every year in training for our technicians, which is, you know, a drop in a bucket compared to what like Milton Cat might spend on their technicians with their vast training that has even more training than we have. It's very important to be able to take care of yourself, but at the same time, I don't think the state can be without some of these dealers, and the manufacturers are not equipped to distribute parts in a timely fashion that the dealers can respond to and stock. That's what they're here for, is to support that product. So, you know, we feel very strongly that this bill might endanger losing the dealers that support us and all the other industry out there that relies so heavily on them.
Great. Do you have time, 5 minutes or so, to stick around for questions?
Sure.
Can you just tell us the kind of equipment that you use? Or actually, let me ask if you could clarify for those of us who don't know, myself included, what business you're in and then what kind of equipment you use.
So we are a limestone quarry. We have a quarry in Shelburne, Swanton, and Middlebury, quarrying limestone. And we have a fleet of roughly 100 pieces of equipment, about 90 of which are Caterpillar loaders, excavators, bulldozers, haul trucks, generators, everything that would support a quarrying operation, plus a fleet of on-highway trucks.
Thank you. Representative Lipsky.
Thank you, Timothy, for joining us. My question really has to do with, do you produce a product, i.e. like a limestone for fertilizer that supports the agricultural community?
Yes,
Products that you focus on.
Yes, we do. We're very much so in the agriculture industry for the chicken farms, fertilizer for the farmers' fields. So we are absolutely into the agricultural industry.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? All right, anything else you'd like to add, Mr. White? And thank you for being patient there with the technology and Appreciate your time this morning.
Hey, thank you.
All right. I think we'll stop there then. We've got a large group of folks coming in at 10:45. So if committee members want to stretch, go ahead before we go off. Yeah.
Right. I just have one question that has nothing to do with H81, but it's come up in this committee. Monument Dairy, is the monument the Bennington Monument or is it another monument? Because you're in Weybridge, so it's confusing.
It's Weybridge Monument for Silas Wright.
That explains that. Right. We were wondering, why would Bennington be honored in Weybridge?
The next time we're in Weybridge, where will we find that monument?
Right in the center of town, right by the church.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Weybridge isn't so big that you would miss it.
Just drive off the main road and run right into it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.